Good morning, class. Today we're going to be making a game like the amazing 1976 Breakout game that you see in front of you. This is the actual game from 1976. I've made a version similar to it here. So let's have a look at this game working. So we're controlling the paddle. And if you die, you get some lovely sound of yourself. Like I recorded there of myself doing the Mario death sound. Oh, a little bit of a bug there. But every time I hit the ball, I get a point. And if the ball falls, then I die. So that's the game we're going to be making. Let's have a look at the code for it. So first off, head over to Scratch and click on Create. So you can get rid of the cat, and we're going to be starting by adding the paddle at the bottom of the screen. So let's find a paddle. I could use a line. Let's use this paddle here. And we're going to want that paddle to be a bit smaller. So let's make that size 50. And we're going to want it to move right and left when we start. I'm just going to change the backdrop actually. So let's go to backdrops. And we're going to add a new backdrop. And we're going to add the XY grid. So at the middle, it's 0, 0. At the top, it's 0 on X and 180 on Y. So you can get an idea here of how the X values and Y values change around this grid. That will help put things in the right places. So for this paddle, what are we going to do? We want it to start at the bottom down there. And then we want it to go from right to left when we use the right and left keys. So let's do the code for that. So when we click the start button, we want to go to, so we're going to find the go to block. We're going to go to 0 on the X, because look, this line down the middle, that's 0. So we're going to go to 0 on the X, and on Y, when we're down there, we can see here that's 147. So let's say 100 and minus 150 on the Y. So whenever we click that start button, it's going to go back to the middle there. Perfect. Now, we want to make it so that when we go right and left with our mouse, and not with our mouse, with our keyboard, it goes from right to left. So that's going to be one of these forever blocks. So forever, if we're touching, no, not touching, if the key left arrow is pressed, then we want to change X. The X is right and left. So if we're pressing the left arrow, we want to go this way, which is to negative. So we're going to change X by, let's say, -10. And let's see this working. So with my keyboard, I press left and I go left. And I also need to add the right one as well. So I'm going to take this block here, and using Control C and Control V, I'm going to copy that. So I've got a copy of that one. And we're going to now do the right arrow. So when the right arrow is pressed, we're going to change X. We're going to go positive this time. So we're going to get rid of that negative sign. We're going to go +10. And let's see if this works. Awesome. So that's really all we need for the paddle. Now we can start thinking about adding a ball that's going to hit that paddle. So let's choose a new sprite, and we're going to choose a ball. There's a ball. And oh, again, we want to make that a bit smaller, so let's change that size to maybe 50. It looks like a better size. So there's our ball. Let's start thinking about what we want to do with that ball. So first of all, let's see if we can get that ball so it bounces around the place a bit. So we're going to start off. Now we're now on the ball, not the paddle. So there's the code for the paddle. Now we're on the ball. So when we start the game, when we do this green flag, we want the ball to start moving and then bouncing around the place. So we want one of these forever blocks again. So we want a forever loop. It's going to go in there forever. And we're going to want to move by 10 steps. So let's see what happens now. Oh, okay, good. So it starts moving, and it's always moving in that direction. But then when it touches the side, we want something to happen. So we want to somehow sense if it's on the side of the screen. So if it's on the edge, well, that looks useful. If it's on the edge, let's bounce around. And there we go. We've got our ball bouncing from one side to the other, but it's a bit boring at the moment. We want it to, I don't know, like not come off at the same angle would make a lot of sense. So how can we do that? Let's have a look. Let's try an if block. So if we're touching the edge, so if we're touching the edge of the screen, then instead of just bouncing straight off, before we bounce straight off, so let's do this before it bounces straight off. How do we get that before that one? Well, it's not easy to. I want these ones outside there. There we go. So if it's touching the edge, then I want it to kind of come off at a slightly different angle. So I want it to turn a little bit. So we're going to turn. Ah, there we go. So now it's turning, but it's always at the moment turning the same amount. It's always turning 15 degrees. So instead we're going to introduce a random number. So instead of always turning 15 degrees, we want it to turn a random amount of degrees between, let's say, minus 15 degrees and positive 15 degrees. Aha, that looks better. So we have a little bit of randomness now as that ball moves around that screen. And at the moment, if our paddle's underneath, it doesn't do anything, but at some point we're going to want it so that if our paddle is underneath that ball, then something happens. So if we're touching the paddle, we want something to happen. So let's find one of these blocks, if blocks. So if we're touching the paddle, I think we probably want to do this before we check if we're touching the edge. It might be easier to add things to that block before we put it in. So if we touch the paddle, there we go. If we touch the paddle, there, I'll make that a bit bigger so you can see it a bit easier. So if we're touching the paddle, we kind of want to turn around the other way, don't we? So let's turn 180 degrees. If you think there's a 360 degrees in a circle, so 180. Oh, why doesn't that work? Oh, we might have to press. Oh, it's not in there at the moment, is it? We're going to have to put it in here as well. And then restart things. So if we touch the paddle, does it turn around? Yes. So we've got a ball bouncing around the screen, and every time it touches that paddle, it goes back in the other direction. Perfect. Okay, so I think what we want now is if the ball goes beneath the paddle, well, that's when we lose our life, isn't it? So if the ball goes beneath the paddle, and if we don't manage to touch that ball, then we want to die or something bad to happen. So if, let's find another if block. If it goes beneath, if we look on here, this is the y-axis. So our paddle, if we remember, it's at minus 150 on the y-axis. There's 0. Minus 180 is down here, so that's on minus 150. So if the ball goes below that, so if, here's our less than. So if the, what do we want to look at here? We want to, if the y position is less than minus 150, then we want something to happen. In fact, we kind of want things to stop. So let's say if it goes less than minus 150, we want to stop everything. Oh, look, the ball's just got stuck under the paddle there. So let's just put this in here somewhere as well. Be very careful when you're copying this code that it's indented in that same kind of way. And let's see if that works. Why doesn't the ball start moving? Look, when I'm pressing that flag, nothing's happening because the ball is starting below negative 150, so it's automatically going to stop everything. So we're going to have to add something at the beginning of the game to put the ball in the right position. So let's go at the beginning of the game. Again, we're on the ball still. For the beginning of the game, let's go to, I guess let's just go to the middle here at 0, 0. So let's go to 0, 0 at the beginning of the game. There we go. And as soon as that ball went beneath the paddle, we died. So if we hit the ball, it stays in play. If we don't hit it, we don't die. We don't, and it dies. Okay, so when we die, we want something a little bit more exciting to happen. So let's have the background change when we die. And I think we can get rid of this background as well now. So let's have a look at our backdrops. And I think let's get rid of this one. And well, let's have a slightly more fun background normally. Let's go for the stars one. That's a bit more exciting, isn't it? And we can get rid of this blank backdrop. And we want a kind of dead backdrop as well. So I think what we'll do is we'll paint a new backdrop and let's make it red. So we're going to choose red as the colour. It won't let us fill it in unless we convert to bitmap first. Now I can fill it in with red. So I've got a nice red background there. So we've either got the stars background when we're alive, or we've got the red background when we're dead. So we need to do a couple of things in our code now to get this to work. So when we die, so let's go back to the ball there. And what we want to say is when we die, this is where we die in here. We're going to stop everything, but before we stop everything, let's switch the background or the backdrop. So let's switch that backdrop when we die to, oh, it's just called backdrop 1. Let's give that a name. Let's go on that backdrop and let's call that one dead. Okay, and go back to our code on the ball. So we're going to switch to dead when we die. Right, let's play. Oh, okay, but now the game starts dead as well. That's no good. Let's change the backdrop when we start the game to the stars. Okay, so we've got the lovely star backdrop. And then once that ball falls down, we die. Now, this is where it gets a bit fun. We need it to have some sort of a sound when we die, really, don't we? So let's say start the sound. We're going to switch the backdrop and we're going to start a sound. And let's record a sound here. Let's go for a Mario death sound. Here we go. Do 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 do. Excellent. And then we choose which part of this sound we want. Do 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 do. And we'll go for that one. Then we get back to our code over here, and we're going to change it to that recording. That's our death sound. In fact, let's give it a name. Let's give that death sound death. That's the name. And so we switch the backdrop to dead, and we start that sound. So let's try it out. Start the game. Oh, I keep on dying. And oh, so you'll notice it's not doing the sound, and the reason for that is because it's stopping all. So I did this on purpose just to show you not making mistakes here. So instead of starting the sound, we're going to play the sound until it's done. That's a crucial difference there. Let's try it out now. Do 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 do. Excellent. So it's making the sound and it's doing the whole sound once we die. Do 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 do. Right. Do 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 do. Okay. So what do we do next? So at the moment, every time we start the game, the ball comes down at the same angle. So we want something a bit more exciting than that. So we need a bit of randomness in the game. So when we start the game, we're going to, let's see, what can we do? We can point in a certain direction. So we go to the middle of the screen and then we're going to point in the direction. I think it'll be better if we're going maybe up the screen instead of down to give us a little bit more time to get ready for the ball. And we're going to pick a random number again for this one. So we're going to pick a random number and we're going to pick a number between, well, let's have a look at this direction. So let's go between, I don't know, up here maybe. And what is that? Oh, that's negative 22. So let's change that to negative, let's say 20 and positive 20. So 0 is up the screen, negative 20 is here, and positive 20 is here. So we're going to pick a random number. There we go. Every time we start now, the ball goes up at a slightly different angle, which gives us a little bit more time to get to that ball. Okay, we want to add one more thing. Whenever we hit the paddle, let's have it make a noise then as well. So if we're touching the paddle when we turn round, we want to play a sound at that point as well. So this time we're going to do start sound, because otherwise the game's going to kind of pause when we do that. So when we do play sound until done, it kind of pauses until we do it. But with start sound, it's just going to start it, but then things can keep on running. Otherwise the ball's kind of going to get stuck. It's not going to move until the sound is finished. So when we're touching the paddle, we're turning 180 degrees, and then we're going to do well, let's make another sound. Beep. We'll just make that. Beep. Beep. Excellent. Let's call it Beep. And did I give it a name? Bip. Yeah. So we're going to start the sound. Bip. And let's see that working. Bip. Bip. Excellent. Very last thing for this walkthrough, we're going to set a score and make that score go up every time we hit the paddle. So we're going to make a new variable and we're going to call that score. And when we hit the paddle, when we touch the paddle and we do that bip sound, we're going to change that score, not set it, but change that score. Change the score by 1, as in it's going to go up by 1 every time we hit the paddle. Let's see that working. You can see the score went up by 1. And again. Okay. And now the next game starts on the same score, so we're going to have to make the score go back to 0. So let's set that score to 0 at the beginning of the game. And there we have it. That's the game in full for this demo. I'm just going to show you all the code again. So there's all the code for the ball. You want to copy that. And then for the paddle, that's all the code we have for the paddle. And remember, we added 2 backdrops as well. So if we go and have a look at the backdrops, we've got our stars backdrop, and we've got our dead backdrop, and we've also got the pop sound, and where's the other sound? The sounds are in here. So we've got those sounds there, the death sound and the bip sound. What I'd like you to do is to copy the code for yourself to make the same game, and then try and find ways to extend the game as well. Thank you very much.